This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Hello, it's 4:30 on Wednesday, April 5th. This is a meeting of the Public Safety Committee.
It's Monday.
Monday.
Yeah, Monday.
Monday, April 5th. No, not 5th. Today's April.
Sorry.
Email was from the... I got the email on
I think I better go back to
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. It's Monday, April 10th. It's 4:30. It's a Public Safety Building Committee, and we're going to open it up with call to order. And first, we'll know if there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak. Seeing no one. We have two sets of meetings that we need to review. The first set of meetings is first meeting of minutes are from March 27th. Have people had a chance to review?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of March.
Well, I have a comment, or just a question about the second page on the ratings. They don't all add up to the same tally. They don't tally uniformly. I thought the highest rating was 70.
Right, but don't forget, we took out Mark's.
Oh, correct, but still, do they all 54 and 80?
Some people didn't tally at all. Some people left it blank.
Certain things.
That's the reason?
So let's confirm that with Ed. Was that the case, that some people didn't put ratings on certain areas? Or
I know some people did not.
So that explains the difference in total outcome. Okay, thank you.
And I have a question. Should we attach to the minutes the cumulative tally? I think you were bringing that up to speed, Ed. Should that be attached to the minutes or just leave the tallies as is? You know what I'm talking about, the cumulative one where the scoring came from.
You can file them with the minutes. I don't necessarily know if you have to attach them or not.
You don't have to reference, see attached, or...
I mean, you can reference them, but I would not say see attached.
Is the RFQ available if people wanted to look at the scoring?
The summary sheet, yes.
Okay, so it's on the webpage?
No, it is not on the webpage yet.
So you might want to attach the final RFQ because that's where the scoring actually was published.
Attach the final RFQ.
I don't think we have a separate scoring sheet, unless you have one that you sent out to everybody. Was that a separate scoring sheet?
There was that summary scoring sheet.
Yeah, it's an Excel file.
Correct.
Yeah. So don't reference that they're attached, just include them with the minutes.
Yeah.
Or include them with documents.
You can reference them.
In the minutes.
Right.
Okay.
You can say the summary scoring sheet.
Okay.
Do a motion to approve.
So they're
as
slightly
modified?
altered, because I'll use that term.
Just saw John for the first time.
Any other comments?
Is there a second to my motion?
Oh, I'll second it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any motion to accept it as modified?
Road 9?
Palmer, aye.
All those in favor must do a roll call because we are on web. I mean on Zoom.
Matt's and I.
Charlie,
Mark, yes.
Workman, yes.
Yes. Mancino, yes.
Is that everybody? Okay, unanimous, okay.
Unanimous. We also have a second.
Oh, we didn't get John, though.
Did you
Did
vote,
you
John?
You talking to me?
No,
John O'Shea.
John is on Zoom.
Oh,
Did you
Hi,
approve?
I can accept the minutes if that's proper.
Yep. That's what we need.
Accepted.
Okay.
Then I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of April 4th.
And
And the same thing, I have the question. I don't know if it exists, but did each of those firms, they provided us hard copies of their presentation. Did they provide, emailed copies of the presentation, and should those be attached or referenced?
I don't recall any electronic copies.
We'd have to ask them for them, perhaps.
Did you get one, Ed? Did you get any of these electronically?
No.
They came in with their own laptops, their
Yeah.
own thumb drives.
So just leave things out, because of course the minutes don't say anything about the present, other than to reference they presented.
What date are we talking here? I'm sorry.
That was the meeting we had, the interviews.
Right.
So just leave the minutes as is without any reference to any other that they presented.
Yes. Do you want the other copy too?
No, I have that.
Okay.
I have a question, technical.
For some reason I didn't have this.
Was the interview videotaped?
It was, and I looked for it yesterday. It hadn't yet been posted on media. So the answer is yes, it was videotaped, wasn't it? I mean, it was live as well, wasn't it?
I believe so, yes.
So I should change that, say it's recorded, was live and recorded.
So the presentation's in that.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So there's two changes.
Is there a motion to accept the minutes as modified?
Yeah, I actually made a motion to accept the minutes. I don't think there was a second, though, was there yet?
No, but I'll second it again.
Palmer, yes.
Roden, yes.
Mattson, yes.
Darnold, yes.
Martin, yes.
Mickey, yes.
O'Shea, yes.
Workman, yes.
Great.
The next item on the agenda is any information from the ad hoc senior center feasibility study.
Yep, had a meeting on Thursday at noon by Zoom, and we had the final feasibility study presented to us. I mean, other than minor edits, we've since got a copy of the final draft. The committee voted to recommend to the select board and to the town to purchase land at 89 Clark Street, which is the Gillagher property. Ryan Gillagher was on the call as well. And so that's the decision by this committee. So tomorrow night, they're presenting at the select board meeting also. And if the feeling is that they meet the stated final plan, that the will, then they would be able to then be in receipt of the donation from the Red Parsons estate. And then from there, they'll be forming a building committee and a capital committee and fundraising committee and what else. But right now, they're presenting to the select board tomorrow night the final plan and the recommendation from the committee.
Question on ignorance. Is it the easterly or westerly parcel? Next to Keystone or next to Heritage?
Next to Heritage.
And if the select board accepts the recommendation for 89 Clark, then the select board will begin negotiations with Gillagher? Is that how that works?
I think so. But it would have to be approved by town meeting. So we're talking, and it's not going to happen this annual town meeting. It'll actually be likely a special town meeting going further. I don't think the plan of the committee is to pull together something that soon. I think there's also an intention to find out more about this committee, because obviously there's more to discuss as a whole.
I see, so it's
It's a recommendation.
Got it, okay.
They had a quote final plan Now, the next step is to, and in fact, the study actually has next steps. And one of them is present to the select board, begin transition from an ad hoc feasibility committee to a building committee, discuss fundraising. The Friends of the Seniors Center has already formed a subgroup on fundraising for the senior center, so. Anything else? You were on the call. Is there anything else I'm missing?
I don't think so.
It's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, shall we say, a tedious timeline and number of steps to be done once the funds are received.
Yeah, right. But right now, we're all hoping that the study meets the requirements of the will. So Amanda Zadonis-Kemp was invited to the presentation tomorrow night. And if she's not able to come, then there'll be a meeting with her afterwards. And then there'll be all these other things kind of happening, but nothing right away.
But there's enough time left so that you'll have the opportunity to meet the obligations of the will if they haven't already been met, correct?
Right, right.
If
I think
they're
the May
small.
17th or 19th was the 2-year deadline from Mr. Parsons' death, so it's finished, well in advance of the deadline. So that's a recommendation. There was the possibility of buying either a smaller lot or all of it up to a certain point. And he had asked for a, what do you call it?
Easement?
Easement to get to the back property. So there was a recommendation, well, it was presented as you could have this much, or you can have the entire thing. And I think that the senior center group motion was to recommend purchasing the entire. So, I wish I had the information. Do you know the amounts, Ed?
733,000 seems to stick in my mind.
Yeah. And the price tag was?
That was 733,000.
Right,
Okay.
but the smaller property was 400 and some thousand, right?
I don't remember seeing one in the smaller properties.
Anyway,
Yeah,
they did give specific amounts for a certain number of acreage.
And what's that acreage for the entire piece?
The entire piece is 5 acres versus 3, or?
I'd have to go back and look, to be
Yeah.
sure.
I'll see if I can bring it up. But anyway, the recommendation is that was the preferred site. There was a matrix that was put together that had all kinds of different things, and that came up as the number 1. And there was not a vote to have 2, 3, 4 or any other properties, because that was selected as the best site.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is to discuss the proposals and interviews with the firms interviewed for the feasibility study. I'm going to recluse myself from any discussions or any discussions at all regarding this choice of the firm, so I'm going to turn over the chairmanship to our Vice Chair, Christina Benson.
Thanks, Mark. And before we start deliberations, I will just say that I won't entertain any motions until everyone has had a chance to speak and the full deliberation takes place. So, and hopefully, with luck, we will come to consensus rather than just a majority vote. So, who would like to start?
I have some questions to start with, because I think it's apropos to the presentations. We know that Sallow and Phoenix CBA presented and were, in fact, the firm that did the study in advance of the 2015 presentation to the town, and ultimately didn't pass. As I went back and looked at something that was posted on the website under the Public Safety Building Committee regarding the presentation, and I'm looking at you, Charlie, because I have a feeling it was a presentation you may have done, or maybe they did it, and it looked like, and I just wanted to clarify, were they asked at that time, was any firm asked to do a comparative study of different properties, or was it determined then that there was one property to look at and that was the location of the current fire station? And were they brought in, selected after that was determined that that was going to be the location? And I know it's a very different situation now. The Historic Commission has modified their thinking on the maintenance of the facade and things like that. So that's my question. Were they asked to do comparisons of other properties? And does anybody know the answer?
Well, Don and I were involved, but you're talking 12 years ago now. If memory serves, it originally started with trying to find a location, and that was done by the committee itself. Then the committee came forward to the select board with 3 sites.
Okay.
And the select board at the time indicated they wanted to focus on town-owned properties. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, John, but if I remember right, Kale convened were basically to look at the present fire station to move forward. I don't recall if they ever were asked to look at any other parcels, simply because the select board had already given the committee its marching orders to focus on town-owned land. That's my recollection, but I could be wrong too.
That's my recollection as well. I don't recall discussion about other lands.
Not when we hired them.
They mentioned in the presentation the town garage, remember?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what role they played or it played and whose decision it was, but they mentioned the town garage last week when they did the interview.
I know that when we started, they looked at what the 3 sites were that we had suggested, and the town garage was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
But we all recognized the fact that we would have to rebuild the highway department someplace else, and that's why it got taken off the table right away. Cindy, I can't get into it any deeper because I don't recall, but I believe they focused mostly just on that. That was basically what they had to work with.
And, except for Don and
How about the
Billingsworth.
Chiefs? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my reflection as well.
Mine also.
Yeah, that they came in, that was already picked, and I believe it was between the committee and select board.
Okay, so then their role was to do a feasibility study on one location.
Yeah, and that one was enough with all of the stuff going on.
Yeah, I remember that. There was a lot of stuff.
Because prior to that, the committee was really into trying to find properties. We did an awful lot of work trying to locate stuff. And then when the select board started to have us focus on this property, we discovered that there was 12 intersecting deeds on this property, plus a county road that was never abandoned that this building was built on. So we had to get the county commissioners to vote to abandon the road. We had to put together a survey and then put a straw deed together to make this landmass one deed. I remember working with Attorney Parker on that. So there was a lot of committee work that was being done that made us focus on this lot.
I don't want to dominate, but I have a few more questions, but somebody else wants to
Well,
speak.
we have we have the full meeting to discuss this, so we
All right.
need all questions answered.
Well, this is just my overall kind of thought. This is a really important step that we're facing right now. I'm probably not telling you anything you don't already know, because we're at risk for not getting this accepted by the town for whatever reason. I really feel the town, in the greater sense, knows the importance of getting a new public safety building because of all the problems with the current police station and the current fire station. On the other hand, it's going to cost a lot of money, one way or the other, and as time ticks by, it's going to cost more and more and more, because everything's costing more and more and more. We're probably going to need a debt exclusion. So I think that as we think about whatever the firm we choose is, we have to kind of line out what we think are the important qualifications over and above the licensure and the certification and the fact that they have experience and they have, good recommendations from previous clients, et cetera. I just feel that this is really critical to do this. I also think that I came up with some bullet points that I thought should be considered while we do this. I think that whomever we choose has to be recognized that they are willing to fully understand the needs of our town and the needs of our town. They have to come in with really fresh eyes. That's important to me. They can't go on something that they thought from before. They need to be objective, and they have to not only do they have to consider whatever was provided in the original RFQ, but they need to ascertain, because this is their expertise, they need to ascertain what is it they need to know in order to do a good feasibility study. They have to have energy, and they have to have the ability to bring in those fresh eyes. They have to demonstrate a very thoughtful approach to the fact that we are just plain Southampton. We're not like any other town that they've done. And how are we going to get this passed? They need to figure out a way to get it passed and advise us in that way. And also, it needs to be a team that we all feel can be comfortably worked with by everybody involved. If it's a different building committee at the time, if it's not this committee, et cetera. And I also think, finally, that whoever we choose as the firm to do the feasibility study doesn't necessarily have to be the firm that does the architect plan. That this is a one step. So those are my overriding thoughts as I kind of decided in my head who I thought might have presented to fulfill those points that I'm making right now. That's my general preamble.
And to that point, I'll just say that Williamsburg did not use the same firm for both feasibility and building architect. So it may be more efficient to do that, I'm not sure, but to use the same, but it's not always done. So.
West Hampton didn't either. I reached out to West Hampton. I don't believe West Hampton either.
They had two different.
So.
And when that happens, most of the time firms do the drawings and they place the building on the site in different configurations and so forth. So I know that Abacus did the senior center one, and they looked at the programming and then decided the space that's needed. They laid it out in a certain way based on what we told them, how important it is to be able to encourage socialization, not to have everything behind closed doors, so to speak. So they came up with a design, and they are very big on light. So it was a very light, bright place. So if a new company comes in under the building committee, do they just look at the footprint and then they obviously don't take the exact same building, right? Do they then work with the building committee to come up with maybe a revised plan? Or how does that work when you choose a separate firm from the building, from the feasibility to the building? This is just a general question.
Are you choosing to?
I guess I'm asking a technical question.
Yeah, this is a general question.
Yeah, it's not unusual. The feasibility study is a concept, almost a cartoon. This will fit. This is a program and everything. Yeah. But the final design is very often, I think, every time different than the concept design.
Okay.
It evolves as you get in greater detail.
Okay.
Okay, good.
That helps, thanks.
Even when it's the same firm?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. So that's very informative. Thanks. Well, let's have some impressions. Let's get the conversation going about how the interviews were and what your impressions are of it. Should I pick Chief Illingsworth to start?
Well, I'll first start off by saying what Cindy mentioned. Cost is going to be it. And for me, obviously my concerns were quality, aesthetics, obviously make sure that the cost is big, and I recognize that from the last time. And for me, I felt like both firms provided a very a good demonstration. In fact, HKT, I thought their demonstrations were great. I did. I have the experience with the previous firm, CBA, or is it, I don't want to go pronounce their CBA. And I can say through personal experience that I found a good working relationship with them. Certain things I liked from different firms. From HKT, I like the fact that they seem to have a little bit more of a progressive approach with the buildings. However, what I liked about CBA was that they seemed like they were more conducive to cost effectiveness. And when I say that was one thing in particular, a couple things in particular. During the last committee that we had, we did a site visit at Ashburnham PD, and I've got a public safety complex. And I was very impressed with that. And CBA designed that. In fact, it's in their manual. And what I liked about that was that they had an attractive facade, but yet had a steel pre-manufactured building attached to it, which I'm sure drastically reduced costs. And that is one of the things that's something that they said in their interview. They mentioned, combining different types of building strategies to reduce cost. What I found with HKT was they seemed to stress on the vertical development and going higher, and maybe reducing the footprint of it by going higher. And quite honestly, I don't know what is more cost effective. So I think that from my last recollection of being in the committee, elevators are extremely expensive to maintain as well as extremely expensive to install. So that had a concern. But again, this is not my wheelhouse, so I can't speak what is most cost effective. That's not my position. I like the fact that CBA is more local, and how they mentioned that as far as having there was a question about how often they would meet with us. And their response, there really was no limitations, whether it was any time they could meet with us, based on their proximity to the community. I found that favorable. I've also been in some of the public safety complexes that they've built and found them to be, like I said, Ashburnham, East Hampton Public Safety Complex. I believe they did Northampton as well. I've been inside all those buildings, and they're beautiful buildings and well thought out. I have not had that experience though with HKT, so I can't speak for what they've built. My initial impression, not that it can't be influenced by everybody else here, because I'm sure people came up with their own ideas and what they have determined to be something that maybe I missed. I may have missed some things too. But standing right now, based on my review of everybody, my past experiences, I would choose CBA. But that's not my choice right now. I'm open to what everyone else has to say. There's plenty of things I may have missed.
May I make a comment? My impression on the verticality was that they were just presenting options. That's how I interpreted it. They weren't saying we prefer up. They were saying that there are different ways to think about it. So my interpretation of that was maybe a little bit different from yours.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think too, Kalo and Beanick have the advantage of having facilities around here that you have seen, whereas we have no idea, and that's unfortunate that we don't have something from HKT to compare to, because it gives, in my mind, Kalo and Beanick an advantage just because HKT is more of an unknown and we have to rely. So those were my comments to your comments.
Just one other thing I picked up on was that Kalo and Beanick, they seemed to do the research based on the sites. They already had some thoughts on the sites that we were considering, where I did not see that with HKT, as far as the Zero College Highway, as well as Clark Street sites.
See, that bothered me though, because they were, that was almost like the tail wagging the dog. Like, they were basically doing the feasibility study in front of us as part of the presentation. And I was kind of bothered by that because I didn't find it at all objective. Like, I think that when I've been in meetings also, when he came to the first meeting of the public safety building when it reformed again, he basically, well, you're gonna need 22,000 feet, and he was actually coming, like, it wasn't at all objective, methodical, it was just throwing things out there that, if we want public trust, we need people who are deliberate, that are objective, that do due diligence, that bring in the public all along the way. And I just feel like they were coming to conclusions. And if I was somebody who was very, I am obviously very concerned about conservation and endangered species, but I thought they were almost dismissive of anybody that had, that was concerned about invasive species, like, I don't know, what was it, wood turtle, whatever it was. Like, I just felt like it wasn't very thoughtful.
I saw it as more of, they did their homework. They're watching, they saw some of the committee meetings, probably the Council on Aging committee meetings. And I looked at that as just them, seemed like they were doing the homework as far as what they had.
I thought they were coming to conclusions before they even did the study. That's the way I saw it.
So now, would you, since you have made these comments, like to make your comments?
I think that HKT scored the best. I think that if we're talking about public support, I think that they have a more of a leg up. I do like the buildings. I think that HKT talked more about. I think they talked more about what the community wants. They said that several times, and I think that CBA, I think they got more to a level of the. For example, the programming and the features of a public safety complex, probably more than HKT did. They were at a different level on that. But I felt that I don't think CBA presented that well. I think they had the advantage of being familiar with a lot of people in this committee and a lot of people in the town, but I don't think that they did the best presentation. When it comes right down to it, I think that either one of them might do a very good job. But I think HKT would be more objective, and I think they would be starting more from scratch in terms of being, working with the town. I'm very bothered. I'm so glad you asked the question about why it didn't work out the first time around. Obviously, they didn't get the public support, or the committee didn't, or someone, because we're back at the drawing table again.
May I comment on that? With regards to that question and the response, and that was a very valid question, I don't think they had any other choice, to be quite honest with you. They were working in a very bad, difficult situation based on the land layout, the ledge, and the fact that they couldn't move that building, that small building could not move, so they had to work around that. And I think one of the conditions, and correct me if I'm wrong, Don, was that a facade of that building had to be replicated in the same way of the fire department, the old schoolhouse, if you will, right? That was part of the condition.
Right.
There was a lot of things aspects of that job that they had to work around that I don't think it made it particularly easy. Which increased the costs.
Not only did it have to be, was it replicated or used? In other words, you couldn't move the current facade.
replicate.
It only had to be replicated?
Yeah, something that would fit in architecturally.
How many meetings did they have with the public?
I don't remember, to be quite honest.
I know there was at least one because it was at the school. I can say one. I don't remember any other than one significant meeting at the school.
Do you think people showed up at the town meeting? Why didn't it pass? Because it was too expensive?
I believe, I heard different words, different phrases. One was it was too expensive. Another person had told me that there wasn't enough information about energy conservation, how much that building would cost for monthly expenses. And then there was another comment about it being the Taj Mahal, right? And those are comments that I remember specifically. But being a resident in this town and working here as long as I have, cost is a major factor whether or not this is going to succeed.
Well, that's why I felt like the senior center, they proposed a 15,300 square foot facility, and the committee said, no, that's too expensive, it's too big, we don't need that, even for growth. And so we ended up having it be at 12,000. And it seemed like once we looked at the program, we said, okay, we definitely want a separate room for this, a separate room for this. We definitely need a medical sort of office and we need some room for durable medical equipment. And, so once we just, cut it down, it became sort of a right-size situation. And I'm just, wondering what role did CBA play in any and all of that?
I recall the layout of it, and I remember going through, because they would go, this is the past, they reached out to the police department. In fact, I was on the committee at that time, so they reached out to me. I was the chief, and my chief kind of delegated me to be the spokesperson. And essentially, it was a needs assessment. What do you definitely have to have for the police department? And the fire department, I think, had the same questions, and we combined. So what would appear to be a Taj Mahal to the public were all functional workspaces that we needed to have.
In my mind, that place was never a Taj Mahal.
No,
That was
it
a
was
lot,
just
that was a lot of loose talk.
Yeah, but see, that's what's so important about reaching out to the public, because all of us have gone to visit buildings and we see that they have a gym, right? And sometimes they have a community room. But if you don't explain to the public why is it important that police and fire have a gym, then you just lost a lot of people that think that, they're up there just working out. Like, I just feel like there's a piece that's missing when it comes to public support. And until you explain why the reason for these things are, you're going to lose people. The day of the interviews, I was telling a few people afterwards, somebody came up to me the day of the interviews and said, "You're still on the select board, right?" "Yep." "What's happening with the old town hall?" And I said, "Well, right now, there's a hope that, explained about it was considered and then it was quickly taken off the table. It's not enough land, blah, blah, blah. But right now, the Historical Commission has, not agreed to have that taken down." So they were just like, "Oh my God, it's such a beautiful building. I'd hate to see that come down." I said, "Well, they agreed that it was okay to take the fire station down." And their comment was, "Oh, that's too bad too. I mean, that goes way back. That was originally a school." I said, "I know that, Civil War era." But people are going to ask, why did we buy land? People already asked me, why did we buy land next to the town hall, the current police station? Why did we buy land next to the fire station? Like, I just feel like we have to be really transparent. We have to.
There's good answers for that.
I know there are. I was one of the ones that voted in favor of buying both of those things. I'm just saying, we have to communicate to the public. That's what I'm saying.
And I got to add to this. I've lived in this town for 27 years, and I was not even informed, because I was working full time. I worked all the time during the previous, attempt to put a public safety building together. And I'm embarrassed about that, but I also don't believe that it was in my face well enough, in my husband's face, that we were not present, you know who shows up at town meetings? We're lucky we get, if 200, we get 200 people, we're thrilled, because we think that's a lot out of
40%
6,000.
of the town.
Yeah. He's got his hand up.
Yes, Charlie.
You know what I'm hearing? Really simple. No matter which company we hire, we all acknowledge the fact that we have to do better as a committee to get this out. No matter who we hire,
That's true.
it's going to be us driving this to make this go forward.
But I think the company we hire also makes a big difference. I mean, I think that just having gone through this exact same experience with the senior center, I think that the event that we had at the senior center was very important. I think there were a capacity number of people that went to that. There was a good amount of people that were at the community presentation. I think there was good communication between myself and Ed and the select board and back and forth. So I still think that they play a big role in making this successful.
With all due respect, yes and no. You will not know until you go to town meeting just what the town actually,
I know.
you know, and even being the previous committee, and I've been on committees forever. I've been in town 70 years. And I've watched certain things that had to be brought up 3 different times in 3 different years before the town finally decided, yeah, I guess we need to do this. So assuming that the senior center is going to go forward, it may, but it may go to town meeting and there'll be an attitude of, we don't want to buy that land.
Absolutely. There are people going to say that it's taking private land off the tax rolls. There are people going to say we don't want our taxes to go up. By the way, our taxes have gone down for the last 3 years in Southampton. It's the assessments that have gone up. But bottom line is people paying more money in taxes than they used to, but the tax rate has gone down. So I get it. I totally understand what you're saying, which is why the more people you can influence, the more people you can touch before town meeting to get them to go to town meeting, the better chances you're going to have of having something pass. But you're right. There's people that, regardless, don't want to buy the land and don't want to do a debt exclusion.
You remember the cave people?
The what?
The cave people.
No, what?
Some 20 years ago, we had a running joke in town. It was citizens against virtually everything.
Yeah. Well, I think what Chief Ellinger said is true. People are very, very focused on the finances. I mean, inflation has been very high. There's a lot of people the price of houses in this town are incredibly high. So I totally get it. I think what did the amount come in? Like 8 million? 10? What was the amount for the senior center numbers based on property?
Oh, geez. 1.3, was it?
Million?
That they wanted for it?
No. I'm talking about, they did a cost estimation of what the senior center would cost based on the various properties.
Oh, okay.
I'll find it. The bottom line is I think cost is huge, but also letting people know, like for example, they showed pictures of people playing pickleball. And, people like,
Who showed pictures of pickleball?
The Abacus originally had
The
some
Abacus,
pictures, and
okay.
we were saying, no, actually, we're not putting in an indoor pickleball thing. Take that out of there. We don't want people thinking that we're going to have X, more square footage by having indoor pickleball. That's not part of the plan. So I just think that you have to make sure that whatever you come up with is well communicated, and we can say, we don't need a community room, or we do need a community room, or we need a exercise room, or we need a gym for the first responders.
Yeah, I remember the Marvin Keystone was a little bit more expensive to develop than the 89 Clark Street. I don't remember the exact figures.
Their original was 1.7 million, but that was for all 12 acres.
Yeah, we're talking actually development and building.
No, there were we were offered 2 parcels of land. One of them was the entire, either 5 or 7 acres, and the other one was more like 3 to 4 acres. and the price tag for each. I think one was 400 and something thousand, the other one was 700 and something thousand. That's my like memory, but don't go by that. Point is, we were given two options for that.
And going back to Chief Illingsworth's comment too about cost and the Ashburn facility, I think it's up to the committee to establish with whomever does the feasibility study right at the front, right up front, that cost is number one, and the town, make the suggestion of Butler-style building in the back and with a facade. And I'm not sure that was defined in the past. But I think that's not. I think that's up to us, and not to the firm who is doing
I agree.
the study.
And I don't want to misspeak, but I remember HKT saying something about pre-engineered buildings. And it was something that, I think it was something along the lines where maybe Chief Workman mentioned about the weight of the weight on the roof, of a flat roof. And there was a reference made about pre-engineered buildings. And that it didn't seem as though they were in favor, but that is just my impression of that discussion. So it would have to be something that I'd want to review again, to make sure that that's the case. But you're right, Christina. Absolutely right that, I think that the committee, whoever's chosen, has to make a point of saying exactly what we want, what we need.
But I don't think, and I need to be corrected if I'm wrong here, but I don't think a Butler-style building necessarily has to be pre-engineered. They can engineer a very straightforward structure, the most spare structure. They can engineer it themselves to meet the standards that we need. So Mark Mancino, I want to move on to you. What were your impressions? If Rini, are you, shall we move on to Mark?
I thought HKT was, they were better communicators. And, I thought they did a good presentation. And, but I don't know, it seems like Kalo and Beanick, seem like they might be more affordable. They gave us a range where HKT couldn't even give us any kind of range. So it makes me wonder, plus there's many unknowns that they have, that Caleb and Beanick have more familiarity with what's going on with the town, which would be, and they seem like they were aware of what was going on with the senior center as well as the properties and all of that stuff. So they're, because they're so close, they seem like they are a little more in tune with this area and what Southampton might need. But I think HKT would be a great company as well. I don't think they would lack in their abilities to do the same thing Caleb and Beanick could do. But they'd be local and I'm not sure as far as the cost for HKT. It's still open.
Can I comment on that? Because it's true, HKT didn't give us a range. What I gathered from that, though, was that they were more objective about it. They were saying, you gave us a lot of things to look at in the RFQ, and of course we gave it to all the firms, and we would want to understand what is it that's your primary, your greatest needs. What are some of the needs that could perhaps become, kind of secondary or not even included in the feasibility study? Because maybe we overshot, maybe we didn't, maybe we asked for things that were perhaps not necessary to include it. And that, I thought their response was one of thoughtfulness. That was my takeaway from their comment about why we're not giving you a range today.
Right, and I think for fresh eyes, HK&T would be the people to pick, because obviously they've been around, from the last study, and they kind of know what's going on with the properties and stuff. They may have already have a presupposition as far as how the people should go.
Can you mute John O'Shea?
Well, we're going to ask John next.
Oh, he's going to be next, okay. Sorry.
Kristen, are you calling on me now?
I'm just, well, in just a moment, but I want to let Mark finish.
I'm pretty much finished, but I do, I lean towards Kayla and Beanick.
Okay. And so now, John, let's hear your impressions.
Okay, I thought both firms are good. I think we did a good job of narrowing it down to these two firms. I thought in the written proposal, HKT was stronger, but in the interview, what I liked about CBA was that they gave a lot of specifics when they answered our questions. HKT, I thought they were a little bit vague sometimes, but maybe that was necessary because the way they didn't have enough information to make a final determination on, the range of their fee, and maybe that was justifiable. But I could feel comfortable going with either one of these firms. But if I was to just write it down in a secret ballot, I probably would say CBA.
Okay, thank you. Anything more before we move to another person?
Not right now.
Okay. Charlie?
A lot of ground's already been covered. The Eastern firm, one of the comments that bothered me was the fact that they said, well, coming out here is going to be a long day. And I appreciate that because I used to do work in Eastern Mass and knew every time you had to go out there, it was a long day. I liked Kalik and Beanick because they stated that if you wanted to get together before work and have a cup of coffee and go over stuff, that's very handy to try to get things done. I got the impression that the Eastern firm's presenters were just that, presenters. They don't actually do the actual work on this, that their job is basically presenting to try to market themselves to get going. The Kalik and Beanick group were the actual people that do the work. That felt more comfortable to me. I would lean towards Kalik and Beanick.
May I comment on that? I think I was under the impression that the women are the architects, they're the principals, and I had no doubt in my mind that they were fully participatory. We all have different impressions.
I had a hard time trying to. I didn't ask. Maybe I should have, but I didn't ask because I've done a lot of these types of interviews for different programs I used to be involved in, and you'd always get, not always, but you'd get these groups that were just hired by a company to do the presentations to get the job, and then they move forward and have their other consultants get involved to do the actual work. I could be wrong. It wouldn't be the first time for me.
When it comes to being closed so far, I mean, I guess because the senior center committee has had meetings, how long have we been a committee? 9 months or something?
Well, at least.
At least,
yeah.
if not a year. The amount of meetings we've had has been, a lot. It's been pretty much every 2 weeks on Thursday at noontime
Yeah.
for 9 to 12 months. And there were 3 times that they actually came on site. One was for the land, to meet with the landowners, another time was to do the senior center presentation, and then the
Two presentations. Yeah.
So, but there was a lot of meetings that were held by Zoom because we have several people on the committee that, valuable people, 2 engineers and an architect that are actually working.
Yeah.
So they were able to join by lunch. It made a big difference.
Yes.
And they're from the east, right, Abacus?
Abacus is from Alston area. Yeah.
Alston, Brookline, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and thank goodness for virtual meetings nowadays.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
that
Yeah.
sort of eliminates the issue of distance,
Yeah.
I think.
And I think HKT did say that they were very amenable to the virtual meetings.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don, you raised your hand.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to plug in my 2 cents worth. I think having somebody like Kayla and Vinik, they're right here, they're in tune to what's going on in the area, in Hampshire County, Franklin County. There's a lot of safety complexes and municipal buildings being built by the small towns. And I just feel that they really know what's going on, and that they'd be easy to work with, easier to work with. I think HKT, I was impressed with their capability. But I think they're a metropolitan type. They're in tune with a high density, a high population density type clientele. And then I think we need somebody that really knows what's going on with the other communities and can keep us from getting too far afield with our needs and our wants. My preference would be for Kayla and Vinik.
And Cindy?
It's kind of lucky that I'm speaking after a lot of you have spoken. I think that the issue of where one firm is, one being closer in Chicopee and the other one being, I think it's the North Shore, is a...
Charleston.
Charleston, right. Okay, Charleston is a... Charleston, Mass. is...
Charlestown.
That's
Boston.
near, near Boston. Okay. I believe that is a moot point in this day and age. I believe that remote connections are the way things are going. So I don't know that the fact that somebody might be able to stop by on their way to have a cup of coffee is a strong point to argue. I do believe that HKT gave a much smoother presentation, and then that's what we asked for. We asked for a presentation, and we asked to understand what their capabilities were, and if you had to rate one against the other, I thought HKT, and I've heard some of you say that as well. I'm really focused on the idea of fresh eyes, and I'm really focused on the fact that the feasibility study doesn't have to be the architect. And maybe all the positives that we know about CBA, which, boy, I was impressed by the building when we went to Hadley, and I haven't seen very many like the rest of you have. I just feel like the fresh eyes idea is a very important one. I also was personally put off by the statement by one of the principals from CBA who said he pretty much knew, I think it was Curtis, he pretty much knew which the best site was. He'd already made the determination, and that was Zero College Highway. He ruled out immediately the two sites on the other side of Cone Park, and he ruled out this one. We didn't ask for that. We didn't ask for a feasibility study. We asked for somebody to present how they would do a feasibility study and what would be objectivity. And I really feel like his decision was made. Perhaps the gentlemen that are with him also made their own decisions, but that was what I heard from his mouth, and I felt like it's not a done deal. As a resident of this town, if I was to go into this and not be a part of this committee, I would want to know why, in very clear terms, the town-owned property that's right here, and I may know more now because I've been on this committee for a while, why we wouldn't want to select the current site of the fire station with the fact that acreage was bought behind that, the idea being that that was where it would be built. I want to know exactly why it wasn't the selected site, if in fact it isn't the selected site. Because I think the cost of land is just so expensive right now. And so that's what I'm looking for, is objectivity. And to me, HKT struck me as being able to bring the fresh eyes, bring the objectivity. And I see this lining up in a really interesting way, that who's voting for what. But I'm suggesting we go with HKT.
And Chief Workman. Oh, Charlie, you want to make a comment to the city?
Yeah, the present fire station, things have changed since we did this the last time.
Yeah.
Historic Commission is comfortable with taking the building down. So
there are factors.
There's factors here that could change this whole approach and opinion and bring us back to that lot again.
Yeah. See, when whoever, and I don't know who that was, invited Curtis to come to the reformed Public Safety Building Committee, he basically crossed off this property and said, you now need a 22,000 square foot facility, and it already decided about where it was going to be. So I agree, I don't think it's very objective. I think that there's a tail that's wagging the dog in this case.
Chief Workman.
I think either could certainly build and present, of course. I thought HKT was by far a better presenter, certainly than what we saw directly. And if we had more of a budget, I think that they would be ideal, because it also seemed like they had a more progressive towards solar gains and, extra features that are more progressive. The unfortunate other side of that is that we're not going to have any money to do anything but put up a basic building. So we're not, as much as I like that and would prefer that, I don't know if it would be advantageous for us because we're so limited in what we have to spend for money and in extras. I don't think we're going to have a lot of extras. The CBA, I thought, it's almost like talking to engineers, which they are, but they presented more like reading a textbook. They didn't come across as someone that the public would love to listen to. It's like listening to somebody read a textbook. They have a lot of experience. I think they have, they know a lot of, and they've obviously thought about, for better or for worse, they've thought about, what lot they think is better already. They've already made some predispositions on their part as to what they thought of different parts of what we're dealing with. And I think it's a good point that, we need to steer them. That we're not looking for them to make those assumptions for us. We're looking to have well thought out plans of what we want to do. And I don't know whether to hold that against them, only because it's like sometimes when you're talking to an engineer, it's like everything is an engineering problem to them. And it's not they're not the polished presenters that HRT were. So I was really pretty torn. I wish I could sort of take the best out of both of them and bring them into the equation, because what we need is sort of the polishedness of the HKT, and we need the experience and frugalness of the CBA. And unfortunately, of course, that's not an option. So pretty split. I guess if I had to come down on one side, it would probably be CBA only because they're a known entity in this area. But the real challenge that I still hold with them in feeling wholeheartedly for them is I worry about like the presentation quality and the fact that it really is a component that we need to do community outreach. So it's kind of splitting hairs in the two is what I feel. I feel comfortable with either direction with them. To split the hair, like I said, I tried to reach out to Tisbury, which was one of the companies that HKT had built on the Cape. It was theoretically a comparative community, but it's a wealthier community on the Cape. And it's just, their building is much larger. It's got like 6 bays. I've got, hopefully I'll be hearing, well, it's going to be too late for this conversation, but I'll be hearing back from the building inspector who sat on the building committee. It would be interesting to hear his take on HKT and if they really lived up to the wonders of their presentation, which was really communication. I didn't hear that from them, so it's just kind of hearsay, I guess. It wasn't going to go anywhere. Certainly, from past experience, did work with CBA for Ashburnham and did look at that. There is it's either an advantage or a disadvantage depending on how you look at it. Certainly I know in emergency services, I'm sure you've been to some of the buildings that they've built, I know I have. So there's a first-hand knowledge of some of what CBA has built. And for the most part, I like that. I like what they've built. As much as I would probably split the hair towards CBA, I do hold reservations as to their presentation capabilities.
Thank you. Now, as vice chair, do I have the opportunity to weigh in? First of all, what I'd like to clarify about the Historical Commission weighing in on the present firehouse is that there was no request for demolition. So we did not vote specifically on imposing or not imposing a demolition delay. That could only take place had the request for a demolition permit been made. What the Historical Commission voted on months ago, probably a year ago now, is that the present commission, the present members of the commission would not recommend it's being saved. So it's not a formal vote, and it could only be decided at the time that an actual demolition permit was applied for. And a demolition delay only means 1 year. And that gives the town the opportunity to, or the owner, this being the town, to find a different solution. So I just want to clarify that we did not vote to, it wasn't a formal vote to not, or to allow it to come down. We couldn't make that vote, so I just wanted to be clear on that.
It's your good rental property. We need a breakfast place in town.
We used to have one.
The train post.
So that means a request for demolition has to go before
before we can make a formal vote.
Yes.
So we agreed as the present members of the commission, and they may be different down the line, the present commission would not put a roadblock up to having that building come down. And I will also just add that in the past, when it was presented to us back in 2014, we were told, the commission, the way it was presented was that the building is falling down. And we as commission members knew that it wasn't falling down. I looked right up at the roof line, and this person stood next to me and said, it's falling down, and the roof line is straight, it's made of bricks, it's clear that it wasn't falling down. And we were brought in a little bit late, so there were other considerations at that time, and we now understand things differently. It would have perhaps been a little bit different had we been worked with in a little bit different way, and it had been explained that this really is not, all of the deficiencies, rather than being told that it was falling down.
Who said it was falling down?
I'm not going to say anything.
Oh, okay, all right.
But that's what I
But I wouldn't want to move it.
No, but it also is clearly...
Yeah, but it's not going to fall down.
So, moving on. I guess I'm with the women on this. I was very impressed both in the written RFQ and in the presentation of how much emphasis the HKT put on building community support. I also agree with Cindy, we're not hiring the architect right now. We're hiring the company that will sell this proposal to the town. And we cannot afford not to have it go through this time. And I thought the fresh energy of the HKT presenters, it actually was exciting for me. I thought, this could be a good project. They referred several times to building a structure that causes civic pride. I liked the different approach. I liked the sort of the energy. I felt a different kind of energy from them. I did feel as though Kalo and Bieniek came in with too much history. And having been involved in the last one, I don't think they did sufficient work to build community support. And I actually thought that that certain people were turned away by some of their approach. And as far as what we're hiring someone to do now, I feel quite strongly that it would behoove us to try someone new, give someone a chance. They don't have to be our architects. They are going to help us sell the project. And I thought they emphasized that. What I heard in the interview was an emphasis on that. So I can just briefly say that I'm wholeheartedly behind HKT. So we do definitely have differing opinions here. Everybody is reading it differently, and now the question is, can we reach a consensus, or do we simply have to move on? And I'm not going to yet entertain a motion, but how would you like to proceed as far as we've all had our moment, our time to offer our impressions, and now we have to come to some kind of decision, because I believe we are to go before the select board tomorrow night to offer a recommendation. So we have work to do in the remaining moments of our meeting.
Can I just, what I heard in this discussion, almost everyone said HKT gave the better presentation. I heard that. And we know they're qualified. They presented their credentials. They're very qualified people. I am, of course, in favor of HKT because of what I said, the fresh eyes, the objectivity, the presenting skills, and the things that I hear as positive for CBA are the fact that they're local, the fact that they know small towns. HKT has done small town work, Cape Cod, other places perhaps. They've also done big metropolitan projects. That's great. The fact that I just feel like the strengths that I'm hearing regarding CBA aren't necessarily the things we need to help sell this. That's what I'm commenting. I'm urging people to reconsider HKT, who have voted for CBA.
Charlie, oh, I'm sorry, Charlie, I was looking at your hand.
One of the things I observed with Kayla Kabinick is the staff that we saw there, aside from Curtis Edgen, the staff has changed over. It's been 12 years plus. So I wouldn't make the assumption that these are all the same people working there that were working there during that other project.
But it was Curtis who was the public face at that in the past.
Yes, it was. But what I'm saying is the staff are so I wouldn't just say totally that, you know, this is all the same people, because it's not.
Oh, I don't think I said that. Okay.
But
Yes, Rita.
I wanted to just mention something that I couldn't find before, so because it has to do with money. I just wanted to mention, for some strange reason, I'm not sure why, the last page of this cost estimating on the senior center thing flipped to a different language. I don't know what language it is. I don't speak that language. It's bizarre. The entire thing is in English except for cost estimating. So let me know if you have that. But they have cost estimating. What language is that? Bizarre? I don't think it's Spanish. Did you notice that before?
I think I did, to be honest with you, now that you mention it. Yeah.
Anyway, the price tag for the senior center looks like, and it says, new construction, site work, other project costs. I don't believe it includes the price of the land, but it's between 9 and 11 million. And the letter, don't forget, we're talking about the same sites. So when the letter went out from the select board chair, Chris Fowles, to the landowners, 2 out of the 3 of them wrote back, and 1 of them asked for an extension, Marmon Keystone, and then the extension date came and went, and we didn't hear back from them. So the committee decided to go ahead and recommend 89 Clark Street. So I just wanted to tell you what that said. Thank you for the inquiry on my property at 89 Clark Street for the proposed new senior center. We didn't write saying senior center, we wrote saying purchased. I don't think we said senior center because we knew that would be asking for both. Option 1, as you know, the property is about 7.41 acres, zoned industrial. The asking price for the total parcel of 7.41 acres plus or minus is $735,000. My only contingency is that I have a 50-foot easement to the rear of the property, which is 175 College Highway. I will personally perform all excavation for the proposed perk test that you asked about in the previous email for no charge. Option 2, if the board decides to buy the 4-acre minimum needed, the purchase price will be $585,000. So I just wanted you to have that information. You know, there's a part of me that I believe there's a will, when there's a will, there's a way. And I feel that we've already engaged a fundraiser. We've already reached out to legislatures. We have a grants committee now that's brought in close to $1 million worth of grants. We put on the one stop plus the other one, money for the pre-construction of the public safety complex. I just feel that I would love to be able to find a way to fund this through grants and capital campaign and all of that, and then most likely doing a debt exclusion for public safety. but it just points it all in the more direction of getting public support. And I think that, I guess since I've been on this committee, I've had a really hard time understanding why this committee as a whole wants to do everything that was done the way it was done in the past. The same committee members, the same land, the same firm, even the same questions to ask the interview, at the interview. I just haven't entirely understood why we've had a public safety complex committee for 20 years, and we don't have a public safety. I agree with Cindy. We can't get it wrong this time. We have to keep moving forward. And I just feel that either one of the firms, I think, they bolster the top two firms. I just think that the most important thing right now is to get the public behind this. That's why I think TK, the other one has a little bit more of an edge on that.
Repeat that last thing.
I think that one of the most important things is the public support for this. And so I think HKT, I think, has an edge on that.
Charlie?
Nothing, it just, her statement was flipped the first time, that's why Cindy asked me.
I just worry about, already coming to conclusions, like when he came as a guest to the Public Safety Building Committee, Curtis was already saying, can't be here, it can't be on this site anymore. And he said, and you need 22,000 square feet. I mean, he hasn't even done the study yet. I mean, he hasn't even met with the chiefs. So what programming do you have? What do you need? I think you can't go along what you already know from comparisons to other centers. You have to listen to the people in Southampton. And I just feel like, I just think we need more objectivity.
I think we're ready to take a vote.
Okay. Are we? I thought we were going to work towards consensus before we went to vote.
I was hoping for consensus.
That's called a filibuster.
If not, we'll have to take a vote for majority. I understand that, but I think that to move forward as a cohesive group, that it would be nice to all be in agreement that that we're making a good choice.
I don't feel as strongly as you all do, as far as, they're both good firms, and you feel quite strongly about one firm. I could go either way, so it's not, and basically, I was looking at it more as a building and not as the presentation to get it through the town, because that's the critical part. If it doesn't go through the town, doesn't accept it, then, it doesn't matter how great the architecture is, it's not going to be building. I think they were better presenters.
Which one was better?
HKT. They were better communicators, but I don't feel as strongly about Caleb Bienick as you all seem to be about HKT.
John, do you want to jump in?
Well, Kristen, I agree with you. It'd be great if we could have consensus on this. And if the group was leaning heavily in one direction, I would go with that direction, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So, I don't know, I think at this point, we have to make a decision and go forward.
Okay, then, I guess that I'll entertain a motion.
Really? Nobody wants
I move that we vote for HKT.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
It's got to be roll call.
Oh, well, okay. Roll call. Roll call.
Then I'd probably recommend you call out the names and let them vote.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, thanks. I'm new at this.
Okay.
Charlie?
No.
Chief Workman?
No.
Chief Illingsworth?
No.
Mark?
No.
No.
Yay.
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 Abstain.
And John?
John says no.
So now we have to.
Motion failed.
Motion failed. So that, I guess we don't need to make another motion, correct?
Yeah,
Or
we
you
have
don't
to
have
have
a-
a
yeah.
have a motion.
You don't have
We
a,
need to make a motion to hire Caleb Kavina.
go to recommend to the select board.
Okay, I'll entertain the next
Right, you're right,
motion.
I'm wrong.
May I have a motion?
I move to hire Caleb Kavina.
Second?
Second.
Chief Illingsworth.
Yes.
Chief Workman.
Yes.
Charlie.
Yes.
John. Mark.
Yes.
Don.
Yes.
No.
No,
No?
Abstaining.
John?
John.
And I say yes.
All right, so it's decided that Kalo and Beanick will be the firm that does the feasibility study.
Can I ask a few more questions? What do you,
What's that?
you looking at the agenda?
I'm just looking to see what's next, but I'm not the chair.
Oh, are you not taking over?
Well, I can. but
Again?
Your chair, you have to turn it back to me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, given that that work is done, I am no longer needed to finish.
All right. Well,
Handing
thank
it
you,
back to
Christina.
you.
The next item on our agenda is to prepare for the meeting for reporting to the select board tomorrow night. We have to make some kind of plan to make the presentation. I don't know if we want to just make a simple statement that we have selected this,
We recommend to them.
pardon?
We recommend to
I
them.
have to go
Recommend
join
to-
another meeting. Would you do me a favor and just, when the meeting's over, close that up, but lock the door, and I'll come back in and get it, so just in case it doesn't disappear.
Okay, we'll do. Thank you, Ed.
Appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thanks, Ed.
I guess, and as far as a recommendation to the select board, is there, that's a question on my part, the negotiation with the selected architect or recommended architect, that's strictly done by the select board and we're not a
That's
party to
my
that?
understanding. That's my understanding, because this committee has no funding. Unless Chris has money that we're not aware of.
$175,000 has been already earmarked for this feasibility study, so,
So we just select board that'll negotiate with them, and
yep.
that's it?
So I think presentation is very straightforward, maybe a quick summary of how we got here. And our final recommendation is for Caleb Beanick to be the architect to be negotiated for the feasibility study.
And that's you that'll do that?
I'll be glad to do that. That was simple. Any
You can
other?
excuse me, you can double check with Ed too to find out. I know that Abacus is doing a presentation on the senior center along with the chairs, Andrew and Janet. So you can, I'm not sure what time it'll be, but you can just
I'll
check
be
with Ed.
there at 7
Okay,
and
well, it's a
whatever
6 o'clock
happens
meeting.
will happen.
Did you
It's a
guys
6
set-
o'clock meeting.
6 o'clock?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you're first on the, after the usual
I-
public comments, I've looked at the agenda.
Oh, okay, so it's on first?
Yes.
Is the senior center on
I'm
second?
sorry. I can't remember who was first, Senior
Okay.
Center or Public
I'll
Safety Building.
check the agenda.
But that's right after the
Yeah,
usual
okay.
stuff of open
Okay.
to the public.
Any other business must be discussed? Again, I think Maureen's already stated that we now have $125,000 appropriated by the select board.
125 with ARPA and 50 with the legislator later earmark. So it's 175 for the,
175.
to negotiate.
And next we need to do is schedule next meeting, because we'll have a meeting tomorrow night. We probably
Can-
need to schedule our.
I have a couple questions before that. Is that
Sure.
okay? Real quick, I know it's 6
Any other
o'clock.
meeting?
Do you think we need a referendum vote to the community to find out, to test the waters, to see where people are on a public safety building? Do you think that needs to go on the warrant? Is that usual procedure?
On the warrant?
No.
I mean, the town meeting?
Yeah, town meeting. I mean, I've seen
Referendum question is
referendums,
usually in the election, town election.
well, then on the town election. I thought I've seen it on the town meeting. I guess not.
I think it's sort of dangerous to put a vote out there without prior
Yeah,
knowledge of
without
what's
any
going
material
on.
or anything out there.
Okay, all right.
That's my opinion, that's one person.
I agree with you too. It's-
Okay.
It's just,
And we don't have, if CBA comes to us and says, so what's your budget? We don't have a budget yet, do we?
that's
We
the
don't.
selectmen. That's like.
They're gonna say how much money could be spent on the public safety building? The select board is?
I think that's, as far as the feasibility study goes, I mean, that's our job, I think, is we're directing the feasibility study, and as it moves along, we're gonna be asking the questions. We don't know, I don't know if we can say we can have a $1 million building.
No.
It has to be based upon program and what's
Okay.
minimum required.
I just thought that's gonna be one of the questions they're gonna ask us. What is our budget? Am I wrong? They're gonna,
What do you mean?
but they're gonna say, do you have $20 million? Is that?
Oh, no, they wouldn't do that. They would, the cost estimators will, they'll look at what we need for programming, they'll make recommendations based on the feedback that the committee provides, and then they'll have a cost estimator come up with what it would cost to actually do what we decide that we need for a town.
Okay.
They won't say how much money you have to spend on this building. I mean, I thought you were talking about negotiating for the feasibility
No,
study.
I'm talking about for the budget for the
No,
building.
no. It works, they arrive at that based on what people say they need for land and programming and
Okay.
square footage and all of that.
Yeah, I've been through that many times on other projects, and same type of thing. We come in and interview everybody.
Yeah.
You know, I have to have this, I have to have that, and then come through and say, okay, that's all your have-tos. And then we ask them, what would you like to have? And their like to have was $20 million. Their have-to-haves are 18 million, but we don't have that. And so the have-to-haves slowly get eliminated, pared down to what is the bare minimum. And that's where your budget comes from. You can't really come in and say, put me a $2 million
Okay.
fire station over here. You know, go to Walmart and buy a shed.
Maybe two.
So it has to be an involved process to come up with an actual cost of building. And then we have to go and convince the town that this is the absolute minimum that we have to accomplish our goal.
Okay, thanks.
I don't think we need to set another meeting until this is done with the select board's negotiation, because once they've actually are hired, then we set the next meeting.
My procedural process, when do we set the next meeting? Where is location now that we can do that?
I think you as the chair will set that based on what the negotiations with the select board
Well,
are.
let's look at our timetable. I think we agreed that the awarding, anybody have the RFQ handy?
I do here.
What does it say for our timetable, that the awarding authority will be by, I think it's April 28th,
Execute contract, April 27th.
April 27th.
Execute
So
contract.
that's right around the corner, so
So what's the next Monday after that? May something, set the meeting for that?
That's May 1st, is the next Monday.
They'll have contract in hand. There we go.
what does it say after April 27th?
It doesn't.
So it just says,
Execute contract by April 27th.
okay.
That's it.
So, I have a question. Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, we have a select board meeting tomorrow night, and then kind of having them pretty much every Tuesday until the town meeting, which is the 2nd. So I think, I guess we'll just,
My question, if the select board award the contract on the 27th, are we ready to meet with Kayla and Bean? I guess we have the kickoff meeting as soon
I
as
would say
possible.
so. I would say so.
We want to shoot for the first.
I would.
Any consensus?
Yeah.
Local minority.
I had a question about negotiations with Kayla and Bean. Certainly, I think there's good concerns of, like the presentation because, I mean, that's, we're still split here in the group. Is there a way to emphasize that presentation is extremely important to us?
Next meeting.
Yeah,
But I mean, within the negotiation, because if they're going to negotiate a price, I mean, there needs to be, because their shortfall was on their presentation.
well, they gave us a range from what, 80 to 125,000
Yeah.
a week. Yeah, but say good point, the select board has to know during
Yeah,
negotiations.
that's a shortfall for us. I
Yeah.
mean, this group is divided, we didn't 100% go with them because we have concerns, and I think the concerns are valid. And
Yeah.
I know that's why I was kind of on the fence with it. It's just because it really is an issue of presentation, and I would like to, emphasize to Kayla and Beanick that needs to be part of what's foremost in what we need. That's their shortcoming. They need to know it's a shortcoming, I think.
Well, maybe entertain a motion that at the presentation tomorrow to the select board that we've chosen Caleb Manning, but encourage the select board to emphasize negotiations, that the public presentation process will be one of the major
Well, then,
aspects of the feasibility study.
then I move that you, when you present to the select board, the chair, emphasize that we, the committee, believe presentation is an important part of this, and that be emphasized with CBA
And that be included as part of the negotiation.
and be included as part of the
Would you
negotiations.
send me that in writing?
If that's a motion, so moved.
I'll second that.
First and second, any
But
comments?
I made the motion. Who seconded
Okay,
it?
I'll second it, whatever.
Okay.
To make that go forward.
Motion first and second, any comments? All those in favor?
We have
Voice
to-
vote?
Palmer, yes.
Roden, aye.
John?
I'm sorry, did you say?
I said Roden, aye.
Oh, sorry. Somebody heard. Aye.
Chief?
So, excuse me, but I have to go. I actually have to be on the Zoom at 6:30, and I have to eat something before I die, so. See you tomorrow night if you go, if not, I'll see you
By
May 1st.
voice
and that's what we
vote
decided.
and roll call, I think
Your
we have
call,
all
right.
ayes.
Yes.
Yes.
So passed.
Did John vote
Did
aye?
John vote, John?
John says aye.
All right.
I move to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn by Charlie.
Before we adjourn, I need to say something. I fully respect the opinion of this committee. I am going to step down from the committee because I will no longer be an asset. Well, maybe I never was an asset, but I won't be an asset. As I say, I fully respect the decision, but I will not be staying on. So I just want to make that. I will submit a letter of resignation to the select board. So now we can make a motion.
Well, I have to comment that you have been a great asset and we will definitely miss you. Motion made and seconded to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second,
Aye.
Palmer, aye.
Matt's aye.
Darnold, aye. John, aye. Mark, aye. Keith, aye. And Chief, aye. Motion,
John, aye.
John, aye. Thank you for joining us, John.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.